I did boot up Eastbook 2 again after a very long time between there, where I was going very hot and heavy at the beginning of the year, and then
I kind of forgot that you were.
Everything happened in between since. So
I got a new job in between in the meantime. So
God,
that helps the cause.
Yeah. But I want to finish that before the end of the year.
Yeah. Speaking of, sometime soon here, I got to start up mine.
Yeah, you had a good one too.
I know. I was just gonna say I got to let you know. I don't know why I'm drawing a blanket.
Oberdin,
because Return to the Oberdin.
Yeah.
Because I was just thinking about that game yesterday. I was like, I gotta fire that one up.
I really want to play that game.
Yeah, we got to sync up on that. I think John might have it too.
I think either that or he's definitely very interested in it.
I was gonna say if it's not, it's definitely one that's like on his radar. And
Yep.
Oh man. All right, should we do a little clap ski here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's always a good idea.
Before we forget.
Literally forget every single time.
I know.
I don't know that I've ever been the person to remind about the clap. Maybe once.
I was gonna say maybe once or twice.
Maybe.
Hey everybody, welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with Randall Nolery.
Hey folks.
And it's just the two of us tonight. I feel like it's been a little while since it's been just the two of us. We did one with just John and I. Yeah, I was going to say, it's been a little while since we've had a session here in a minute.
Yeah.
Almost a month, although we've still managed. I feel like we managed to always like coordinate our schedules enough to where like when we have a long chunk between recordings, we manage to stockpile enough beforehand. Like, I don't know. We got a good rhythm down going these days.
We got to feed the feed, of course.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess speaking of getting into a good rhythm here, I know you've been kind of getting into a rhythm with a game that you've been sinking your teeth into over the last couple of months here, I guess. I guess we all kind of have been, although I will admittedly say I haven't gone back to it a ton in recent months. But
is it a rhythm or is it a compulsion? I don't know. It's on Nintendo Switch, which means I can just grab it out of the dock whenever I feel like and turn that sucker on and start playing, which I never still have taken my Hori grips off. I've always been team Hori grip ever since I got those. Maybe
I pretty much have that on at all times too. Every once in a while I'll play a game that like has like even though the D-pad's good on there, it'll be like a very specific like up, down, left, right kind of game where it's like you're moving on a grid in like a fast-paced kind of way where I'm like, I do kind of like that split D-pad on the Joy-Cons. I'll bust those out in like very rare like top-down grid-based kind of games. I'll like sometimes want to use them for that.
It's killer for Puyo Puyo Tetris in particular.
Exactly. Games like that where you're just like, you just want to move things and know that you're just hitting one. I'm not going to accidentally hit up or down. I'm just moving one square to the left, one pixel, and that's it. You know?
Yes. But I think a main reason why Balatro, besides the fact that my life is always extremely busy and hectic and I'm just carving time out for things, the reason Balatro keeps coming back to me on Switch is because it's not heavy action or input oriented, even though, like I've said in the past, I've accidentally discarded whole hands or like sold things that I meant to like, it'll be like, oh, you could use this to like get the solve value of all the jokers, and instead I sell it for $1 or something. And like, come on, man. I've gotten better over time. The muscle memory has built up using it on Switch, where that does not happen as often. But
that's still such a frustrating feeling. Like even I remember when me and my brother would play like sports games growing up, and we'd be like, "Oh, I accidentally like playing Madden. Like, oh, I accidentally passed it to the X receiver instead of triangle." It's like that would never happen in real life. You'd never be like, "Oh, I accidentally threw it to the tight end instead of the wide receiver. Whoops!"
I accidentally threw it into a whole crowd of players.
Yeah, just that stuff that like you wish you had the undo, but then if you had the undo, it would make the game, the challenge, not fun, you know?
Yeah, hence there's a whole conversation around that with rewind features being built into emulator layers and things like that. And it's, although, and this is getting way off topic, but like I've noticed on some of the modern retro re-releases where it's like, here's that retro game, but in the emulator layer, and it might have rewind stuff stuff, but you can then like unbutton map the rewind, like to not accidentally do it. Or it's like take the temptation away from using it, but it still exists if you ever wanted to map it back again. I'm like, oh, that's a nice approach. I like that way of going about it. You know, it exists. I just don't have to interact with it, especially if it's not tied to a button that I could accidentally press.
Yeah, totally. Because, that temptation is a little too tempting when it's just sitting there. Like, all you got to do is hit ZR or ZL to fast forward or rewind. Yeah.
Or accidentally do so and throw yourself out of the flow of the game in general.
Right.
But with Balatro, so I had unlocked all of the... I think I've unlocked all the decks, at least all the ones that it shows me. I've gone through all the different, like, I forget what they're called, but like all the different like layers of different scenarios within the yellow deck in particular, of like the different like difficulty layers that it can throw at you to start, right?
Yeah.
I did all of those successfully. And
dang.
Yeah. And now I'm doing the challenges, which are, you know, a whole separate section where there's these individual challenge scenarios. One, like some of the examples are like, let's see here. One was, all jokers are eternal, which basically means, you know, you can't sell them. Once you've picked them up, they stay with you forever. Okay. There's no destroying them. There's no selling them. But you still only have like typically the 5 Joker slots. So then it's another modifier at that point where it's like, okay, I see that I could get this Joker maybe even for free, but is that the best Joker to lead to success on this run in the overall scheme of things, right? Especially when early on, typically in Balatro, you're getting more common Jokers typically. And as the antes and the rounds move on, you start getting more into this next one. You can have an uncommon Joker for free, or here's a rare Joker, or here's a polychrome rare Joker, down the road. Right. That now you're getting the 1.5% mult on top of whatever that rare Joker had as its base attributes. All that kind of impacts the decisions you make right from the beginning of saying, I kind of need a Joker or two to have enough mults or, extra chips to get through these early rounds, but I don't want to overdo it and limit my ceiling for my potential to complete the entire run or go above and beyond that, which I've been doing lately. Is like, I beat that challenge too. I'm past 8 of 8, but let's do the endless mode now and continue on and see how long it takes me until I like over 1 million or whatever that it needs to satisfy that criteria that I can't touch because I'm nowhere near the level of mult to achieve it or whatever. Or you just got a bad draw of cards and it just kind of is what it is in a roguelike that way, right?
Right.
But I've been just hooked on doing those challenges. They've been great. Another one was like a Medusa-based one where, there's a Joker that'll give you the stone cards every single time you select a blind.
Okay.
And then you have to figure out, how can I get what I need to get when I'm getting like almost nothing but these stone cards in my hand now? Like, can you maximize that? Then it becomes, okay, maybe destroying cards, which is something that happens in tarot, cards sometimes, the ability to destroy cards. And then often it's like, is there that much value in getting this specific tarot card to destroy 2 cards? Often there isn't. But in that circumstance, I can remove them from the options that I could draw from my deck, at least try to limit the number of stone cards coming through without having to, or not having to burn too many of my discards, just trying to cycle through, So it just gets into even more layered strategy and how all these different like Jokers and tarot cards and spectral cards and enhancements on cards kind of play off each other. They're really clever, the challenges.
Yeah. Do you have to have you only unlocked the challenges for that yellow deck that you've completed everything on, or can you do challenges on any of the decks?
So the challenges, it's not even like deck specific. It's like a whole separate like menu section, and it just kind of starts you with, And the challenges, so it's very open-ended. Like it's like challenges, and then from there it just kind of, it's numerically, I think there's like 20 challenges as a preset with some, and it seems like there might be some other stuff too, but they're all individually like, here's this challenge. They'll kind of give you a nice summary of like, in this challenge, you know, maybe after round 4, you can't pick up any more new jokers or whatever, but it like explains all that on the front side. Or like in this one, you know, every time you play a card, it's going to cost you money or whatever. And you just kind of have to figure out like, okay, how do I have to like upend the way that I normally play? I can't just rely on my, you know, 2 pair over and over again. I got to figure out other ways of going about this. Based on the constraints. And I'm always into that too. Like it's combining the roguelike stuff, which I love to death anyway, plus now these specific constraints that push me out of my comfort zone too. And now I'm just like checking off all the challenges. Like I said, I think there's 20 at least to start, and I'm on 11 or 12, 11th or 12th one. So yeah,
man, I gotta up my Balatro playing, just to not necessarily like play it as much, but like I feel like I've only like beaten like the first round of like 1 or 2 of the decks. I think just 1.
Oh but man, yeah.
There's a whole world out there. No pun intended. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's God. I just feel like now there's certain ways of going about it that I feel like have led to success more often than not when I'm playing too, of like being a little bit more aggressive in that first ante where the stakes are so low, to say like, maybe, you know, if the incentives to skip those blinds are good enough, like an
just
uncommon joker,
that full first round.
Like uncommon joker, and like the next cards are free, or you know, something, or you know, planet pack or whatever, like stuff like that I can get early is probably worth it better than the $4 or whatever I'd get from winning the ante, you know, more often than that. And even if it means in that first ante on the boss level, I'll probably lose at least half the time, because I'm like leaving myself exposed to get to a certain threshold in 3 or 4 hands. Right. But it's just fun. It's like, it's always so engaging to me.
And the perfect game to like you said, not only on Switch, but with like the hectic schedules that I know all 3 of us have had lately. Like I feel like it's just the perfect game to like you said, it's like obviously engaging mentally, but it's not like you're sitting here cracking the craziest puzzle ever.
No.
Or you're, you know, having to do any kind of twitch movements. It's just like, hey, I'm getting that satisfaction of just some randomly generated and just leaning into the way the cards are dealt. Particular round, or, you know, leaning into that particular challenge and how to work around it. Like you said, upending the way you think. Like I do really like that aspect of any kind of game, you know, where it's just like, this is the normal way, and then here's a tweak to that formula.
And I love that. And I don't even typically I know I can do the card counting thing where I can pull up like a trigger to like look at how many more cards could show up. And if I'm really squeezing it at the last like hand or two, maybe I'll do that a little bit in later rounds. But typically I'm not even that bothered with any of that stuff. I'm just like, give me what you give me and I'll make the most of it. You know, I love playing that way.
Yeah, I really got to go back to that one, because it's been a hot minute. I've really, since we talked about it last on the podcast, I've only played it maybe 1 or 2 other times. So
break it back out.
Yeah.
Sorry if that's all you end up playing though, like me.
Well, if you're good to move on from there, speaking of breaking it back out, I finally broke my Xbox back out for the first time in a while. I don't know what prompted me to hop on there. I think it was just kind of the thought that I was like, I haven't checked out the Game Pass selection in a while, see if there's been anything new added. They do tend to just like randomly pop up some like new releases, you know, indie, and a lot of times like indie games that I wasn't even fully aware of. In this case, not necessarily an excuse for me to not be aware of this one, because I'm a pretty big fan of Annapurna Publishing. And I wouldn't say I'm a pretty big fan because I'm not like following them all the time, but you know, John and I think did you play Wilmot's Warehouse as well, Randall?
No, I didn't.
We just talk about that one?
No, but it looked fantastic, and I loved hearing you guys gush about it.
Yeah, so the developer of that one, I think it's a developer and an artist that like teamed up together, and then they made another game called I Am Dead, which I also picked up. I think it's also from Annapurna, and I've pretty much never played it. I just booted it up for 2 seconds. Looks kind of like a narrative puzzle, first person, kind of almost like a point and click kind of thing. But anyways, when I checked out Game Pass most recently, I was like, wait, is this another game from that same duo? At least, like the little splash screen at the beginning. I was like, that looks like the same people that worked on Wilmot's Warehouse.
Nice.
So it's this new game called Flock. And it's this kind of 3D, kind of exploration game. It seems like I was a little bit worried at first because it was kind of the trailer I watched was kind of like really leaning into like, hey, it's multiplayer, like this is online multiplayer game. And so I was like, oh, is it going to be one of those games where like people have to be online? And like even just looking at the trailer, as much as it caught my eye, I was like, how many people are really going to be playing this game online? It kind of has like a Ali world, cell shaded kind of style, for lack of a comparison, like that kind of 3D, but like everything's real like rounded. Nothing has like a really like defined shape to it. Like it's kind of comic booky, cartoony. But basically you like create a character right in the beginning. You can customize it as much as you want. I was just kind of like hitting random until I got a combination that I liked. You have a character and actually like a bird that you ride on, and then you're kind of just flying around in the clouds. Like the game just kind of opens up after you create your character. You can play a solo game, and then you can also host a game or join a game as well. But it seemed like you could just go on a solo adventure. Nice. So I clicked on that. I don't know if there's any kind of random generation. If you're playing, I don't know what's going on in terms of like how the core of the game works. But at least in terms of when I dove into the single player campaign, it just kind of starts out with like a pretty light narrative. You're flying around on this bird and you get to this area and you kind of sync up with, I can't remember if they're old friends of yours or relatives, or I think they're relatives because I think you refer to the one character as your aunt. Okay. But basically it's very like Pokemon-esque, almost like you get there and it's like, she's almost like Professor Oak style. Like, hey, you got to help us find it. Like we're exploring the island and I can't remember who it is, but like these students are helping us, but we can't keep up with the creatures on the island. Like we're documenting everything else, but we can't keep up with the creatures. But since you're one of these bird riders, I forget what they call you exactly, but like, since you can ride this bird around, you can keep up with the creatures on the island or in the world or whatever. So like, I'm going to teach you how to ride around on this bird. And like, it's a 3D game, but it mostly has like almost like a top down 2D kind of style. Like even when the elevation changes, like your bird, like you're just basically pressing forward and rotating the camera however you want, or you can turn however you want with the joystick too. But like your character, your bird is just going to elevate as needed and lower as needed. And like, it's kind of cool. Like you're on these islands that are like floating in the clouds, and then it has like a Pokemon Snap kind of vibe to it, because you're not necessarily taking pictures, but there's just kind of like things happening around you. You're not on rails or anything like that. You're flying around totally freely. But then basically just something about the like, just like, I don't know, the exploration or like the sense of wonder, I guess, is like kind of reminded me of that a little bit from Pokemon Snap. Just like that sense of like, oh, what's going to happen around this corner or something like that. Not that there's as many surprises just yet. And then basically, as you're flying around, you'll start to discover some of these creatures. And then it kind of like lightly prompts you at the very first ones you'll find, it'll pop up this menu and say like, oh, this is you discovered a new family of creatures. And then this is part of like the beagle family. I forget that's just a dog name. I forget what that there's something similar to that for like these kind of like slug style creatures. And then basically like right at the beginning of the game, there's all these different whistles that your aunt is telling you about. Like these whistles are how you can tame these creatures. And then at the last second, this other like group of like these thieves comes through. They're actually just some kind of animals, but they come through and steal all the whistles. And then you're basically like trying to help your uncle has herds sheep. I know I'm just going all over the rails here. This game's kind of all over the map, but it's like just kind of like there's these like all of the creatures that came and stole all those whistles. They go hide in like these mounds of grass that you can then take the sheep that you can find and collect, drop them off at the mounds of grass, and they just kind of like munch on the grass until it goes away. And then there's only one little thing left, and then you can yank the little thief out of there and you get the whistle back. And then once you get a whistle, you can then now start to tame creatures that will then become a part of your flock. So not only are you discovering them, and I never fully finished that thought, like it'll let you know that you discovered a new like family of creature or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it'll show you a list of like maybe there's 6 or 7 different creatures in that family, and it'll give you a list of names and like a small description of them. And then as they're kind of like, this is sort of the part that reminded me of Pokemon Snap, I guess, for some reason, but like as it'll show you like in almost like a little, not diorama because it's in the world still, but like once you like catch up to the creature and you're like examining it, it's just like the camera is just following that creature around as it flies or does whatever it's doing. And then you have to kind of pick the right one that you think it is based on the description it has.
Oh.
But it doesn't seem like there's any punishment for getting it wrong. Like I got it right mostly every time, but I did have one where I was like, oh, it's this one, and I got it wrong. And then, oh, well, if it's not that one, then it's definitely this one. And I got it wrong again. And I was like, oh, shoot. And then it just told me which one it was. And it was like, oh, better luck next time. But I didn't seem to be punished. Like it just seems like totally relaxed in that sense. And I guess that's sort of what I mean about like the Pokemon Snap comparison too. It's just kind of this like meandering experience. You have a little more control in this case because you're able to like fly around totally freely and go where you want to go to a degree. And then there's like this magical, like it kind of looks like a flying fish that like jumps up at one point in the clouds, like off in the distance, and then it makes the cloud level lower. And then now this like new forest area opened up. So it's like, okay, now I'm exploring this area, finding some new creatures. And it does seem like I honestly don't know how the multiplayer elements would come into play other than just like the social element of it, just being like, you know, like the D-pad is mapped to like you can wave or call for help. And but just like, I don't know, I just really love the presentation of the game and like the laid back nature of it. I love the just like color style, and like I actually really like the kind of like light narrative world building and stuff like that. And the sense of humor is actually pretty funny so far. Like just the dynamic between I think it's your aunt and uncle, or I don't know what their dynamic is, but I'm pretty sure like she's always like kind of ripping on the sheep, like they're worthless, and the uncle's like the sheep are the best. You know, look at what and you get to even name your sheep. You just pick from like I think I named mine Tufty was one of the choices. So it's got a good ring to it, but I don't know. It's just a game that's like oozing with charm. That's another one that I'm really glad I finally fired up the Xbox again, because I was like, oh man, I didn't even know yet another game from Annapurna. Like I feel like I should like just be paying attention to any game that they're putting out at this point.
Oh yeah.
But,
I do like the visual style on this game.
Yeah, it looks
nice. It's vibrant too.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of like Going Under.
Yeah,
is like another good comparison. But yeah, it would be one I think that would be a lot of fun to play with friends. Again, I don't know how the co-op would come into play, but I'm sure you could kind of like, hey, I'm gonna go explore this area. You go explore this area.
Right.
Let me see what we can find. Maybe you can like swap your creatures in the flock. Like best I can tell, it doesn't benefit you in any way to have different characters in your flock following you around, but you can like upgrade how many you can have. The sheep, you can also like shear their wool, and that's like the currency in the game. I haven't played enough to like really get into that. I've only like sheared 2 sheep, so I don't think I have enough to really buy anything. But
nice.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you have to spin the wool? Do you have to spin it into yarn or do anything like that?
You don't have to do anything gameplay wise, other than like jump into a menu and like click on the sheep and like hit the button that says shear. But there is like a cool little like little animation that plays.
Nice.
And then I remember they like after the first one that you shear, and the because all the creatures like they don't actually walk on the ground, they're all kind of like floating and don't have legs really, best I can tell. At least nothing that I've seen yet. Although, no, some of those slug kind of creatures are on the ground, so I don't know. But anyways, these sheep just float on the ground float off the ground and don't have legs. And like the uncle's like, yeah, they kind of remind me of just like little floating sausages or something. Like it's just like like the dialogue is just really like goofy and silly. I definitely really just like the overall, I don't know, vibes of the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's more chill games.
Yeah, seriously. Although to kind of switch gears totally here, although not that this game is totally brutally retro hard, at least not the little bit I've played of it so far, but I know you and I both played a little bit of Ganryu 2. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that fully correctly. And this is a game that I just kind of stumbled upon. I was just scrolling across on the Nintendo Switch eShop like I always do. And I rarely do this anymore because it's just so bogged down these days. But like, I just went and like, you go on like the great deals section and then you can filter it by like lowest price to highest price.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was just like scrolling through all the $2 games, which is like the lowest. Oh my God.
Get through to find anything interesting that way. Oh my goodness.
And it's the thing is like, there's so many times where like I give up, but like there's been a few times where like I keep scrolling and then I'll find a game. I'm like, how is this not like because once you sort it by low price to high price, the like secondary filter is best seller. So like it'll be the top selling cheapest game will be the first one. And like, so I'm scrolling down and I'm like, man, how are more people not buying this game or why are so many people buying this game? But like, at the end of the day, like I kept scrolling and I like well past games that like, you know, just look like beyond, you know, like the days of the DS and the Wii, just like, you know, filling up the what is that term they always use for those like garbage filler games? Shovelware. Yeah, that was the term I was trying to think of. So I was like, I scrolled through pages upon pages of that, and then saw this game called Ganryu 2, which looked like very, you know, right off the bat, it kind of looked like a Neo Geo game. Yeah. And then I looked into it a little bit more, and I was like, oh, this is like actually a sequel to like a kind of like forgotten Neo Geo game.
I
totally
was not
forgotten,
aware of
but
the original. Granted, I'm not nearly rich enough to own a Neo Geo, but I've never played the original Ganryu, even in any of the collections of Neo Geo games.
It's just not something that was on my radar. And then I watched a trailer on I can't remember if it was right on the Switch or if I had to pull it up somewhere else, but because every now and then there's stuff with just stills. But anyways, it's on sale for $2. It's normally $20.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, let me check this out. And I did. Of course, I looked up. I was like, there is a physical version, so maybe I should order that. And I was like, well, $2 compared to $35. I was like, I was like, even if I end up loving this game and decide to buy the physical copy down the road, like, I'm only $2 in the hole at this point. So like it doesn't even bother me. It's
then
like
there's no cartridge switching. Then you just have
exactly.
$2 for no cartridge switching. Congratulations.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I ended up watching the trailer, and I think I did watch a quick review because I remember it getting kind of mixed opinions. But I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go with my gut. This one looks like it's pretty solid, pretty fun. And I have been burned before when I thought that, but like I've played the first, like I beat the whole first level.
Nice.
Beat the first boss and then played like halfway through the second stage, I think. And I'm definitely digging this game a lot. Like it feels like it's very inspired by the Shinobi series. I don't know if the first game feels that way as well. But like it feels very much like Shinobi 3, probably the most, just because the pace is a lot quicker.
Definitely.
And I would say even quicker than Shinobi 3. Like when you can, you double tap the joystick to run.
Feels good.
You are like booking it in
Sprinting.
this game. And I don't remember. I can't remember how Shinobi works. I think in Shinobi when you're running, and I have only played a little bit of those games, so take it with a grain of salt. Although I really did like the little bit I have played of Shinobi 3. But I feel like what I remember when you're running and you do an attack in Shinobi, if I recall it kind of like stopping your momentum. You do kind of like a slide attack or like a little like jump attack forward, but it like also stops you and then you have to like attack again or double tap to run again or do whatever. Where in this game, depending on the situation, but if you're sprinting and you're attacking, I mean, you're just
through,
constantly just slicing through these enemies, like, and you are just booking it like almost Sonic speeds. I mean, just keep it in the Sega family. And then you're like, it has kind of a little bit of that Sonic or Shinobi, not to just keep again going, but that like Sega or like even like Yoshi's Island, like level design where it gets like a little vertical and you can keep going up a little bit. And
here's another kind of sort of touch point
cranny
between those two things you just said is almost Rocket League-esque in the dash across the screen sort of attack stuff you can do, plus the verticality that exists there. There's that. Shinobi 3 definitely came to mind for me, as well as Ninja Spirit, as it definitely comes through a lot. The Turbo Graphics / PC
with that
engine.
really high jump and stuff.
And the way that the enemies kind of appear on screen is very Ninja Spirit that way, and the like different colors seemingly are kind of, best I can tell, might be associated with kind of the item replenishment stuff that they drop. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes with that, but like a lot of that is very Ninja Spirit-esque. Obviously Strider, Genesis, and then this kind of underappreciated game called Kazekuri Ninja Action, which is another like a turbo CD game, like very late era turbo CD sort of game that was strictly like side scrolling beat 'em up. There's definitely some vibes there as far as the amount of your kind of advanced move set that you have in this game. It kind of reminded me of Kazekuri that way, I would say, for being like what's effectively like an action beat 'em up platformer, but has a lot of depth of your character control and different moveset.
Yeah, there's just a lot of fluidity to the movement. Like I almost, even when I'm playing, like you're so mobile, I even forget that there's that dash move a lot of the times, because like I'd be trying to clear like a spike gap or something, and I'm like, man, even with my double jump, like I can't clear this gap. And then I'm like, oh yeah, duh, I have this dash that like darts me across the screen, and also acts as an attack as well. Like you can just plow through a lot of enemies. And actually, I didn't realize it until a little later in my run. I think I was actually streaming this game, but it might have been at a different point when I was playing. But like some of the like heavier enemies that you come up against, that kind of like you have to kind of like wait for their attack.
Oh yeah,
and, like, wait for their
blocking.
Opening. When they're blocking, if you do that dash into them, you kind of like shoulder check them and like stun them, and then you can like attack them. So you kind of like interrupt their block.
Oh shoot!
I don't know if it works in every single case, but I did it once on accident, and then I was like, wait a second, they like, because some of the enemies too, it feels like very retro. Like they have like the pixel art for the most part is like really detailed, but then like a lot of the enemies will just have like their attack will be like a 2-frame animation. Like they'll just go from like one point to the next point. Which is kind of cool. You can always like know, hey, they're in their block stance, or hey, they're like right about to attack, and like just like getting the timings down of all the enemies. But again, just how mobile you are, and you can wall jump seemingly infinitely.
It's very much a retro game at its core. This, between like the way that it feels, it has some of those retro, I guess, warts you would say, but like on purpose. Like it's just meant to be like what feels like a direct sequel to that first game, but widescreen, and but the sprite art, like you said, is fantastic too. It just looks really nice.
Those huge like honking sprites that just like it all just look really nice in motion. I don't know if you made it to the second level.
No, I couldn't. I got to the first boss a couple of times and died. I didn't quite make it, although I also was trying to fire it up half the time and it was too late. And one of the big negatives I will say about this game is, goddamn, does the original, like the loading of this game just takes forever. Like when am I playing an original
when you first boot it up,
game? What's happening here? Why?
I remember doing that on the stream and thinking like, hold on a sec here, guys. This should be starting any second now.
Like it's to the point, like I can be pretty, obviously, like I'm willing to deal with jank. I still play games on, from CD systems from the 90s. I know what loading times feel like, but this is like, what are we doing here? Like I'm like, I want to, it was to the point where like, I feel compelled to count the number of seconds it takes from the time I boot this game and decide I want to play it to getting to the actual like starting,
even just
screen.
The title screen. And then like after that, everything's fine loading wise. Although that was the only other like janky thing I noticed. And I only noticed this on the first stage, but like when I die at any point after like the first section, it seems like it like for a quick split second like loads the background screen of like the opening stage, and then it just like populates the correct image for a second. And I thought it was going to do that at all times, but on the second level it didn't do that at all.
Feels a little under optimized, at least on Switch. I will say there's some this is, again, I'm being a little bit of a snob this way, considering I play so much on Xbox these days and the new one, but it feels a little chuggy from time to time, the frame rate wise, and like some of that was like just like, it feels like we could have spent a little bit more time optimizing this. I know the Switch is a million years old, so it might just be that version. But I did pick up on that.
Yeah, I noticed a few small things, like in that minecart stage on like the one part of the second or the first stage or whatever, where you're riding around in the Donkey Kong Country kind of style minecarts. Like some of the elements of that felt like, it's getting a little chuggy here. But that second stage, the reason I brought that up though is that was kind of the main reason that was the selling point, where I was like, I kept like waffling. People seem mixed on this game, but like there's like some really cool, like, I don't know if it's like a wheat field or just some tall grass or whatever that's like in the background and like just waving in the wind.
Nice.
And just like the way that looked, it was just such a cool,
I love that stuff.
like vibe. It was like, okay, yeah, the pixel art alone and the gameplay is like solid enough where even if it's a little rough around the edges, like it's not like a modern retro masterpiece like Shovel Knight or anything like that. But it's definitely a solid, like, hey, you like Shinobi and you want a little more taste of that? You know, this is definitely solid, like holds up right in that lineage for sure.
I wholly agree, and I love that they made a direct sequel to a game that's of that era and made it pretty spiritually close to that game that came out in the mid 90s, and like I love that sort of stuff. And there's not a ton of games that kind of echo that kind of Shinobi 3 style, I feel like. So I definitely appreciate that.
Agreed. Yeah. I feel like that's like a very specific, like ninja style gameplay. And it's cool to see like a just slightly different take on it. Nothing totally different, but just somebody else doing their version of it.
Yes. There's still plenty of room for those games to exist.
Agreed. But yeah, why don't I kick it back over to you here for a little more kind of modern retro action.
That's my bag. Puzzle Bobble Everybubble, not every bobble. Puzzle Bobble.
I always want to say that every time.
It's every bubble. So this is Puzzle Bobble is Bust a Move. Let's get that out of the way on the front side. Puzzle Bobble is the kind of international name for Bust a Move, the Taito series where you're a cutesy little colorful dinosaur character, chibi character at the bottom that's moving, a little dotted kind of arrow thing back and forth to shoot one bubble out of a certain color to match with the ones you see above you, and you're trying to clear those bubbles by lining them up, or I think it's 3 or more off the top of my head, right? I don't know. It's always enough when I do it.
It's either 3 or 4. I can't remember.
Yeah. But eventually, you like this. Basically, if you have a blue bubble, you don't want to attach it to any other color because that'll keep it there. But if you have a blue bubble and you attach it to 2 or 3 other blue bubbles that are in the kind of stack above you, it'll clear all of those. And, sometimes it'll clear other ones if it's the only thing holding that branch on. And, you gain extra points that way. So that series has been going forever. That, again, Neo Geo, another connection there, too.
Yeah.
But it's been going since the early 90s, and I've always loved Bust a Move. Kevin and I have a lot of history with Bust a Move as well.
Yeah, you're the one that kind of introduced me to that. It's not, I'm sure I'd like played it or come across that series before, but you're the one that made me like realize Bust a Move 4, like, okay, this game can just be a great time.
Masterpiece. Give us the re-release right
seriously. Now. Needs nothing else.
No, just online play.
Exactly.
It's just an online play wrapper, basically. That's all you need. You don't even have to make it widescreen. But this is widescreen. And, that's nice that it's widescreen. They get to do some unique things, especially if you're playing, in any context. So if you're playing by yourself, sometimes it'll be like the full widescreen that you can shoot at, or it'll be more the traditional kind of a 4:3, just kind of the center of the screen is the gameplay area, and you might have just like colorful borders around the side of whatever the level theme is. But you can also do 2 players where both players are sharing kind of the same board of bubbles. They're not competing against each other. I believe you can do that too, but what appealed to me and to Tina was like, oh shoot, it's Bust a Move co-op. It's like we can both shoot at the same bubbles and clear like a board together, basically. And you can do that, I believe, up to 4 players.
That sounds like a kind of a lot of fun. Yeah, even
in like what's a story mode, like what I don't know that you like a story's doing much for you in a puzzle game ever, but it exists, and the levels are sequential that way, and build up over time with the difficulty. Which that was fun too, because then it gives you kind of a rank out of 3 stars for how well you did it, how quickly you cleared it, and how efficiently There's little modifiers on certain bubbles. Like if you hit one that's kind of like, this is me describing something I haven't played in a minute, but in the off the top of my head, it's like a rainbow type of bubble where if you hit that, it's basically saying, okay, whatever color your bubble was, it gets rid of all of those of that color on the board. Okay. Like all of those ones are now gone. And, again, if that was the only thing keeping a branch of bubbles in place, that's going to fall off.
That could be massive. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Now, how does it work with the co-op? Like, do you each have your own like arrow?
Yes.
Like thing that you're shooting out of? Okay.
Yeah. You basically are like on different sides of the screen, just kind of shooting at it as opposed to being in the middle completely that way, which is cool. And you can do that up to 4 players that way, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Whether like you said, I'm sure there's like a versus mode as well, or at least pretty sure.
Yeah,
but like that sounds like a pretty solid party game, like whether co-op or versus. Like, that actually, like up until now, I've been like kind of like I don't know about this game if I need to have it in my collection, and I'm like, wait a sec.
Yeah, and it looks pretty nice. It looks vibrant, like a bust a move / puzzle bobble / Bubble Bobble game should in that way. And it says on here, apparently there's a 2 versus 2 battle mode. So there's even more ways of going about that.
Like teams. Okay.
So there's a lot of variation there. There's even like a Space Invaders mode. It didn't do much for me, but it exists as kind of a bonus thing.
Okay.
I kind of jumped off of it pretty quickly, so I didn't get a great impression of it. But I did play a lot of the base kind of bust-a-move Puzzle Bobble story mode, especially with Tina, and that was cool up until the point where we got to stages where there were bubbles in the stage that were alternating between like 3 different colors, and you kind of had to time it. And then I'm like, this is no longer fun for me. I can't do this effectively. Like I can line up shots really well, but if you're also going to make me time it, where I wanted to hit it when it was blue, but I got it when it was yellow instead, and now that bubble's stuck there, and oh geez.
Yeah, that's part of the fun of that game. Like obviously when you're playing competitive, you got to be moving fast, but it is like there's not a lot up to chance. You're just like you got to just aim at what you're aiming at and hit it, and
take
you hit the shot. You know what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yep. Because all the while, if you take too long, then the board starts creeping on you vertically. Keeps going down until it hits a threshold where you've lost because the bubbles have gotten too close to you, basically, as more and more come down and you're not clearing them as fast as you could be. But I'm glad I own it. That's like the only negative I could say is like, those kind of color changing bubbles sure are kind of annoying. But that only was in certain stages that was the case. Otherwise, it's a bust-a-move. It's probably the bust-a-move on modern console generations, from my experience.
Yeah.
So
it's
nice to have one of those available on a modern system.
Yeah, and you get it on Switch, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and that's like part of, I know you were saying you get the physical copy, and that's part of the, like I was just going to say, like I think maybe I should add this to my Amazon cart, but it's one of those games where like it is like whether it's multiplayer or even just the arcadey stuff, like I do feel like that does tend to lend itself a little bit better. Just like, let me just download this, have it right on my system. And then if I just get the inkling to play it on any given time, I can. Whereas if it's in a cartridge, if I get the inkling, depending on my mood, I very well may not pop it in. So
I would have played this a lot more recently if I owned it digitally instead of just physically. That's for sure. Like that's there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, because I could easily see like if it's just sitting on the system, you and Tina are like, what are we? Instead of watching a show tonight, let's play beat another couple stages of this or whatever.
Yep. Although apparently is it's a physical exclusive that the original Bust-a-Move is only on the physical cartridge, apparently is what I'm reading here, if that means anything to you. Although I know you have other versions of Bust-a-Move available to you. So
I honestly don't actually know if I own any. Now that I think about it, I don't know if I might have bought Bust-a-Move 4 at some point, but it's been so long since I've had like my Dreamcast out and handy and ready that I don't know, and I don't know. I definitely don't know if I have any other version of it. If I never bought that version,
I think that came out on Dreamcast as well as PlayStation, I want to say, and then
Bust-a-Move 4.
Yeah, And then I definitely bought a Bust-A-Move because it was cheap when I was out retro hunting. It was like a Nintendo 64 Bust-A-Move, so I definitely have that one as well. But yeah, Bust-A-Move 4 kind of like makes that irrelevant.
Yeah, it is. I don't know why that version's so good, but it's kind of like those like Bomberman 94 and it's like those. It's like, I don't know why this version of Bomberman is just so much better than the other ones, because it's like pretty much the same, but it's just something about it, like the energy of it.
Yes, the energy,
like,
kind of the soul
to the next
of it,
level.
Right? Yeah, it's definitely, and like the character, like it's more character driven, I'd say, in both of those contexts. Like, you know, Bomberman 94 with the riding the creatures kind of added an element to it, and just more, it's just more of a soul to it. It's got its own character. It's got its own unique feel. It stands apart that way. And Bust-A-Move 4 has got all these ridiculous characters, and in the exact same way that I love Pokemon Puzzle League, in the exact same way that I love Super Puzzle Fighter. It just has so much of its own energy and character, and that draws me in.
Yeah.
This game doesn't quite have that. Puzzle Bobble Everybubble doesn't quite have that level of its own soul and character, I would say, but it looks nice, and I like that it's primarily, you know, 2D art focused. That helps.
And I like that they lean into having some cooperative modes, because
definitely,
to the best of my knowledge, that's something that's not been introduced into the series before, and really not something that's introduced into very many games in general.
Definitely.
I mean, I know there's a lot, obviously in the grand scheme of things, there's a lot of co-op games, but like, especially in like an arcadey kind of sense, like you don't really get too many games like, let's work together and beat this arcade game. You know?
Almost never. Yeah, because you're not going to get as many quarters that way unless you.
Yeah, exactly. Although you might get your friend to be, come on, keep playing with me.
Yeah, that's true.
We got to play together.
I say that, and I definitely
peer pressure.
Spent a lot of quarters playing beat 'em ups that were technically cooperative that way. You know.
Yeah, so. Just like, you're still playing. I want to keep playing too. You know, let me pump another quarter in.
Shout out Golden Axe Revenge of Death Adder. Game's awesome.
I've never played that one.
Oh, it's tremendous. Is easily probably one of the best Sega beat 'em ups ever, but only arcade exclusive. So it makes it
okay. I've definitely seen it. Yeah, because I remember thinking this looks sweet. Because Golden Axe, on Genesis, a little primitive, not bad beat 'em ups, but definitely primitive. But
yes,
I remember seeing the arcade one and going like, wait, this is what Golden Axe can look like? Okay.
Total shame that it never came out on Sega Saturn. It's a total shame. Crying shame.
Yeah. Has it been out on any like of these collections over the years or anything? Like,
kind of. Literally, it's the reason why I own one of the little what are they called? These Sega Astro City arcade machines, is because Golden Axe Revenge of Death Adder was one of the marquee releases on that, like officially for one of the first times available, and not just the arcade machine. So and I knew that I loved that game because Tina and I spent the quarters to see that all the way through. I'm like, we are going to play this.
Nice.
Yeah. It's good. Big tangent. There you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you got me a little bit on a retro kick here. I've had my stuff packed up for so long, but now I'm kind of thinking, man, I kind of want to dig some of my retro stuff out again.
Yeah.
But
it's easier than ever to get that stuff hooked up, I'll say. The aftermarket for retro stuff is crazy. I think the younger generations have taken to it pretty significantly as well.
I think there's just something to be said about that, like quick pick up and play gameplay. That's like not too much. You don't have to sit through an hour tutorial. You just pick up the game and start playing it. And there's only 2 or 3 buttons on the controller, or 4 or however many. Like, you don't have to tell me what button jumps, because eventually I'm going to push it and figure it out.
Exactly. You don't need a manual. Just start pressing buttons and see what happens.
Yeah.
Take it from there. Make your own fun. If it's on cartridge, there's probably no loading either, and that's kind of nice.
Yeah. It's like the glory days of gaming, even though I love nowadays too. It's like there's, that just good games all around.
Oh, big time.
I love it.
Big time. Especially with Switch.
Yeah, seriously, retro and modern. So I don't know. Any more gaming chit chat before we get totally off the rails here?
That's all I got. That's it. That's it for this time.
Nice. Yeah, I think I'm pretty much spent there, and yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into some more stuff soon. Though, got to still dig into my resolution game, which we were talking about before we started here. So, I'll definitely be doing that sooner than later because we're more than halfway through the year here.
We certainly are.
Yeah, but yeah, on that note, yeah, I guess we can wrap things up there. And as always, you can find us on the internet at pursuingpixels.com and pretty much anywhere else. Just look up Pursuing Pixels. And otherwise, we'll catch you next week. And until then, take care.
Bye-bye. There was something else I was thinking about, too, from something that came up during the episode, and it already flew out of my head. Talked about too many other retro things. It always catches my interest.
I know you definitely got me. I don't know what about that was like just making me think like, man, I kind of just want to play some retro games right now.
Yeah, me too. It's kind of been bubbling up in me as well, where I'm just like, it's been a little too long. I kind of want to dive back into that world a bit.
Yeah. Like even like when I played that Super Algebra game on a stream the other day. Because I forgot, I was like, hey, I never streamed that game. That's actually another game that has like a rewind feature. You can do it as much as you want.
Yeah.
And like on the stream, I started doing because I kept going. Like I was like, I don't want to sit here and like crunch all these math numbers like left and right. Ooh. So I was like, well, what does this do? Like 9 times 15. Like what is that going to give me? Like I'll just do it and see what happens, and then just undo it if I don't want to.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because I hate like even when I just play like any kind of puzzle game, sometimes I feel like I'm just sitting there going, like while I'm just staring at the screen, so like nothing's happening on the screen, and I'm just going, die. And so I just feel like I just feel like an idiot and self-conscious. Yeah. So like now I'm sitting here like showing off how dumb I am at math. What is 6 times 4? 26? Oh, whoops. I just felt like such an idiot. Like I don't know. So I was just undoing all my moves, but that game's pretty cool. But anyway, the reason I got sidetracked, the music like has like for whatever reason to me it really reminds me of like Link to the Past, Super Nintendo vibe.
Wow.
And like it's just so good.
That's pretty
so retro.
Yeah, lofty heights there comparison wise. That's pretty cool.
But something like specific about the like whatever sounds they're using. Like like if you told me they like use the same like MIDI soundscape or whatever.
Yeah. Super Nintendo.
Yeah. It's just got those MIDI horns.